Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of the Brad Burns Bridges podcast,
I'm Brad.
and I'm Bridges. Week 3 is what we're getting into. Recapping week 2 pick games. Brad and I both go 2 of 5, so that puts us at 6 of 10 total. So,
Rough week.
yeah, rough week. We're still locked in a tie right at the moment. Well, we know all of our listeners really like listening to us, but we thought it'd be a good time to bring our first guest onto the podcast. This man is a man of many talents. He is a Chiefs super fan. He is a Razorbacks expert from Kansas City. We have Will Frankie. All right, Will. Here we go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Will Frankie in the flesh,
Hello.
joining the Brad Burns Bridges podcast. Real quick before we get into it, want to say thank you for coming on the pod. How does it feel being the first guest on the Brad Burns Bridges podcast? Let's get a real reaction for the
I
people.
mean, it's an honor to be here for one. I think this has. I'll say it. This is probably the next PMT. So to be the first guest on here is pretty huge. To
Yeah, we're
be
gonna
able to
look
be
back at
the
this episode.
Yeah,
yeah. This will be where it really caught fire. I could see this thing having 100,000 views in about 5 years.
oh yeah, for sure. No
So
question about it. Well, thanks again for coming on. We've got a pretty awesome week of college football ahead of us. But before we get into that, let's kind of, recap some of the games from last week. For me personally, it was an extremely tough week. We'll get into that, but let's start on a positive note, Brad. What you think about the Hawkeyes?
Well, I didn't watch a lot of the game. It was kind of one of those preseason matchups where there's not a lot going on. But we came away with a win. We were down 7-0 after the first quarter. So, like the Iowa offense, we just love slow starts and can't seem to get the offense going early, which has been pretty troublesome. Huge injury with Luke Lachey, our starting tight end. He's out for the year. Gruesome leg injury, very similar to the Nick Chubb's thing last night. So don't love that for him and just for the team in general. Thankfully, we got Eric All from Michigan transfer to step in, and he's been a good contributor so far. So we'll see. Probably the biggest test of the entire year coming up this weekend with Penn State, 6:30 at night. So it'll be a test, but it'll be nice to see the boys go against some real competition.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Frankster, I know that you and Brad go way back. I know you're not a big Hawkeye fan, but initial thoughts on the Hawkeyes. They've got a new quarterback. What are you thinking about them?
well, correct me if I'm wrong, but they covered the spread of 28 points, I believe. And even though they had not scored 28 points in the last year, which I think in one game, which I think is pretty groundbreaking. A lot of people were asking for the lines for me because I know Iowa ball, living with Brady for so many years. Um, and I told him to stay away from that 28 point favorite. But boy, was I wrong. This might be a new Iowa team. This could be building something with a little more offensive output, which would be huge.
Yeah,
It took a couple late fourth quarter touchdowns too, which was pretty funny. The offense was getting some slack. It was
Never
like
take your foot off the gas.
Brian Ferentz was trying to pad his scoring average for the year. So
yeah.
it's
What
just
about that
it's a whole.
The McNamara interview earlier in the week too? What didn't you say like something
They
that
come
caught the headlines?
they come a lot.
Yeah, come a
The
lot, man.
Western
And
Michigan defense, they come a lot.
they came all over the end zone, I guess. So that's a good sign for Hawkeyes fans. They're going to need a lot more of that this weekend. Why don't we bounce into the Hogs? I believe last week I made the hot take that we are going to win the West, and that started with BYU winning this week. We came out.
Hey, we're still undefeated at SEC. We're fine.
I mean, we could still win the West, but it was atrocious. I was at a wedding. Shout out my cousin. It was super fun. I was glued to my phone screen, and let me tell you, it started high. We were feeling good, and then it quickly disappeared. We beat ourselves. disappointed with the fourth down, not converting. We have a 245-pound quarterback. Why don't we just QB sneak it, get some forward progression going, and we line up in the backfield, hand it off, get snubbed twice. I believe we were up 10 points middle of the third quarter when the second one happened, which is just a huge vibe killer. Killed everything, set us up, on a bad little scope. But I'll let y'all kind of deep dive into it. Frankie, you want to take it and give your thoughts on the Hogs as a Razorback?
Yeah, I was in DC, our nation's capital, visiting some friends, and we were having a poker night at their house, and we had put that game on, and there were some guys that I'd met there that went to JMU, James Madison University, and I was pulling for them big. They pulled it off, and then we turned into the Hogs game. I was like, all right, guys, it's time for you to pull for the Hogs. And boy, that must have been a disappointing first Hog game for these JMU boys to watch because they looked horrible. I was just screaming at the TV. I'm like, I'm a dead man. I'm a dead man, just screaming. And because I knew that fourth quarter when all those penalties were flying, this had the writing of this is going to be, we're going to lose in embarrassing fashion. Or I really thought we were going to score and then do some like gimmicky play go for the extra point and lose it that way. So I guess that saved me the heartache. But like that almost interception by KJ, which I think was tip. I don't think that was his fault. But the O-line play was just horrible. Like they couldn't get anything going, and the offensive play calling bewildered me. I don't know what we were trying to do, and it was a very frustrating game overall. I think the only bright side was our defense played a lot better than they played in the past. I don't think they were great, but they've definitely stepped up a little bit under the new scheme.
Yeah, I don't think the defense played bad. I do really respect your take on the O line because you were our starting center on our intramural flag football team, so you have some experience up there clanking.
I've been in the trenches.
You have been in the trenches. You know what it takes. I mean, Sam Pittman, came out and said there were hand injuries. What do you think about that? You think that's just a bumbo jumbo, or
Yeah, I mean, you're an SEC O-line. Hand injuries are not really gonna be the thing that brings you down. You
yeah,
gotta step up the play. That's a non-starter there.
yeah,
And the execution was so bad. If it really was a hand injury, get your backups in. I mean, that was such a bad, huge turning point in the game, hold after hold. Just gave us no shot. And so if that's the case, like get those guys out of here.
yeah. I believe it was like 14 penalties for like 160 yards. That is insanity, right
Yeah.
there.
And in crucial times too.
Yeah.
Like it was like third down every time.
Yeah, I'm sure there were some bad penalties, but you can't go in and, I'm not about putting games on penalties anymore. Yeah, there are some, outcomes that are changed as, with some bad penalties and bad timing, but for the most part, I feel like there was some, yellow flags out there, some laundry almost damn near every offensive snap there in the second half. So, I mean, it's tough to watch. We'll get into the LSU game later. So don't want to pregame what we want to see different. I will say when I texted Frankie earlier this week and invited him on the pod, I said, "Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything that I'm leaving out?" And he texted me and said, "Put the Colorado game, watched everything and that he was going to give us basically break the whole thing down from a fundamental standpoint." So let's get into that big time prime time game, one of the most watched college football games I saw. It was the most watched football game of the weekend. A lot closer than a lot of people thought. Frank, take it away.
I think the main takeaway I had from this game is that Colorado is a really fun team to watch, but they're probably not actually that good of a team, or they're not as good as a lot of people think they are. Colorado State is one of the worst college football programs, and they took it to double overtime with like The Rock, Wiz Khalifa, rappers, actors, all on the sideline of that Colorado bench right there. Colorado State had no business being in that game, and yet they were there that whole time. It took a 98-yard drive at the end of the game and a 2-point conversion to send it into overtime. But it was one of the most fun games I've ever watched. Just seeing everybody talk about Deion Sanders. Is he actually a good coach? And then him continually answering that, yes, he is. He's bringing in these guys that are recruiting. And just all that sort of back and forth. And it looked like they were kind of dead in the water in the fourth quarter. And then right when they were running out of time, they put it together and led to a crazy two overtime game, which I think was super fun to watch. And then Colorado student section rushing the field after beating unranked
Yeah.
0-1 Colorado State was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen after rushing the field against 0-1 Nebraska or 0-2 Nebraska unranked. I mean, they need to figure out that you can't just rush the field every time you win. This is a different program than what it was last year, 5 years ago. That's very strange behavior. So hopefully they stop doing that because when USC and Oregon and Washington come to town, I think it's going to be a little bit of a different story. But I think it's going to be fun for right now. It could get a little ugly in the future, but Deion Sanders proved everybody wrong so far, so he might prove me wrong later on down the slate.
Yeah. Brad?
Yeah, I agree with Will. It's I don't really know at this point how good this team is, but they're a fun watch. The whole week leading up to the matchup, it got chippy with Jay Norvell, coach of Colorado State, calling out Dion in press conferences. Dion clapping back, the players chirping a little. It's kind of like this old school college football that we haven't seen in a while, where people are taking it, uh, to the heart and like very serious about kind of these in-state matchups, and it's refreshing after watching like NFL, where there's a lot of hand holding, jersey swaps after every game. Rivalries are just kind of dead. It's kind of nice to see these college in-state rivalries kind of bounce back and turn into kind of these chippy, you know, tough matchups. Obviously, I don't like seeing the injuries with Travis Hunter. It was kind of a cheap shot by their safety, Colorado State's. Um, but everything other than that, I think it's good for the sport and us as fans.
Yeah. I agree with both of y'all. I think Travis Hunter injury obviously sucks, and it was a later hit, which you don't like to see those, especially when it's like on your star player. I really respected Dion coming out in his press conference today and saying basically stuff like this happens. We're not holding anything against that guy. He played a heck of a game, and it's in the past. Travis doesn't think badly of him, so. I do like that stance because, like you said, it was very chippy, and they said it was personal, which I do think is making college football, kind of a comeback, which is really cool to see, especially smaller, schools, in state, for sure. But I thought it was a very entertaining game. I only watched the first half, and like I said, Brad, the lights are going to get shining. Those big rivalry games, you don't know what's going to happen. So it was very interesting to watch. Another pick'em game that we had last week, just want to touch point on it real quick, is Florida, Tennessee. I think both of us didn't even really give that game any light. We were like, no
Yeah,
doubt,
we said that was like that was the easy
easiest
pickup.
pick. Yeah, and both of us were wrong. I didn't get to watch much of the game. I saw that basically Florida took control and Tennessee can't win in the swamp. So just wanted to shout out the Gators because we've kind of not said the nicest thing about their program this year in Billy Napier. They did have a big bounce back weekend.
Yeah, we've been hard on them, but yeah, good to see them get a good win. Um, it kind of just, I mean, I had circled that as just an easy dub for Arkansas. Now I look at our schedule and it's hard to find wins across the board. So we'll see how the rest of the season plays out for us. But yeah, it's looking to be a tough road.
For sure. Frank, did you watch that game at all?
I tuned into the end there for that fight
Yeah.
when the game was already over. I do love a good fight in college football, so that was always fun to see. But like squaring up like you're going to punch somebody in the helmet is always a funny move.
Yeah, let me
I
just
think,
break my hand on your helmet.
yeah, I think we need to bring that back, like a small DB trying to get a lineman, just punch him in the helmet.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, let's hop a little bit into the NFL slate from this past weekend. Y'all are both huge Chiefs fans, so y'all pick up a big win in was it in Arrowhead or was it at Jacksonville? In
At
Arrowhead?
On the
Jacksonville.
road.
At Jacksonville. So yeah, I'll let y'all kind of say what you like, what you don't like, what you want to, work on going forward. So,
Frankie, you got it.
Well, I think the big takeaway from this is that the Chiefs defense is for real. And Chris Jones is back and he was looking dominant. It's kind of sad because I really think this is going to be his last season after all the off-season drama that went down. I'd be very surprised if we're able to get him signed back on the team without some sort of crazy monster deal. But I mean, he looked dominant in that game, just bull rushing, getting sacks, setting up other people to get sacks. Trevor Lawrence was definitely rattled. The only concerning part was that there were like 4 touchdowns that Jacksonville didn't end up getting because the receiver only had 1 foot down or like half a foot down. So if like 2 of those swing the other way, that's a completely different ball game. And obviously we had a lot of issues with like Chiefs wide receivers, and we really should have signed somebody in the offseason that was like worth a shit, like DeAndre Hopkins or something. That would have been electric. But I don't know. We still have Mahomes, and he's going to make those big plays when it matters most. And Kelsey was definitely still working on getting back into the swing of things. So there were some positives, and we won, and you can't complain about a win. But definitely some things to work on. And the punt returning was pretty bad from, I think it was Richie James, like
yeah, he
dropped
lost one.
one and fumbled one maybe. And I mean, that was ugly. We need some special teams help, but I'm not too worried about it. The Chiefs have proved that they can dominate the football at the last second when they need to.
Yeah. Brad?
Yeah, I was able to listen to it on the radio driving back from Fayetteville. I agree with Will. Defense, it sounded amazing. Just good pressure around the board, lots of speed in the back end. A lot of our young guys are playing real well. I think we had 7 rookies starting on defense last year, so they're all in year 2 now. So a little more experience, but same good athleticism, speed across the board. Offense, it's of all the things, it's the last thing you want to worry about it as a Chiefs fan. You got Mahomes, you got Kelsey, you got faith in Andy Reid to pull it together throughout the season. So no worries there. Nice to get the dub. I thought they played well enough in week 1 to get a W. So, no real concerns right here at this point of the year.
Yeah. The only thing that I really picked up was even though Kelsey only had a couple catches, it looked good with Mahomes as far as security blanket. He still looked like he was limping a little bit, so just a little bit of concern there because I have him in fantasy in one of my leagues. But still going to start him over damn near anyone else in the league week to week. Not a thought about it. Moving over, Lions took a tough loss to the Seahawks at home. Lost a lot of key pieces on the defense as far as James Houston, Gardner Johnson. A lot of hype behind this year. I don't think it kills momentum. I do think going forward we have a lot of holes to fill. Montgomery going down hurts. Overall, just wasn't a good week for me as a fan of any athletics. But we will bounce back. I have faith in Jameer Gibbs. I have faith in Dan Campbell. Seahawks aren't a bad team. They obviously didn't pick up a win week 1. Their offense looked good. We couldn't cover anyone, but not the end of the world for me. Going forward, I expect for us to work out some kinks and try to figure it out and just keep that momentum behind us and move on from there. Do y'all have anything to say about the Lions or?
I didn't watch the game, but yeah, they got a good young core. They're probably still, trying to find their role within this team. So I wouldn't worry about a early loss like Seattle, especially a team coming off a loss, not wanting to go 0-2 to start the year. They're probably playing pretty hard, so it's a tough matchup for sure. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't
not
worry.
the end of the world. I want to talk about the boys real quick. The Cowboys look dominant, like one of the best teams in the NFL. Obviously, have one of the best players, if not the best player in all of football, in Micah Parsons. He has looked like an absolute difference maker. Dak looked good against a good Jets defense. They couldn't really get anything going on offense, but I mean, when you're going up against a squad like that in the back end, it is impressive, to hang the points that they did and obviously score on offense a lot. So we got the turnovers and then we converted on offense where we had defensive scores and, special team scores last week. So it was good to see out of Dak. Big high hopes on the Cowboys. I'm on a huge up. So we're going to ride that out and keep it going. Well, I don't know about y'all, but offseason in the NFL, there was a lot of controversy in the running back room and getting paid. And we're seeing it very early in this year with big running backs going down with injuries, right? You have Eckler, Barkley, and now Chubb. Chubb obviously sustaining one of the most gruesome injuries I've ever seen, which is horrible. We shout out Nick Chubb, hope that he recovers fully because I know he's probably watching this. But Frankie, what
Definitely.
do, what do you think about paying running backs in the NFL?
I mean, the Chiefs do not pay their running backs. I don't think they're going to pay Pacheco or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. McKinnon's on a 1 year deal, and they've proved that that's kind of the recipe for success. This isn't the 90s anymore. You just kind of run that pro style offense and air the ball out. Running backs serve their purpose, but the difference between kind of that guy that's looking for a second deal and like a fourth round pick, I mean, it's the pay gap is it's not worth it to pay those guys millions. We see the Cowboys with Zeke. Once he got paid, almost all productivity dropped off, and the drop off is so pronounced with NFL running backs that it's just really not worth to pay them, which sucks for them because I think you're going to see it start people transitioning in the high school level and college level away from the running back spot. So I think it's going to get kind of less and less extreme. But you're always going to have guys like CMC that can go out in the flat and catch a ball. I think we're going to see a big transition to that for guys that want to get paid to be able to have your pass catching down and not just be like a hard nosed runner like Derrick Henry, even though obviously he's dominant. I would in the next 2 years, I really don't think he's gonna be as big of a factor once he gets a little bit older and a little bit slower, and he's gonna drop off pretty hard.
Yeah, Frank, or I mean Brad.
Yeah, I agree. I think Will made a good point. The drop off sometimes in these contracts is just so severe that it really just cripples your offense. If you're paying a guy, Frankie made a good example. The Cowboys paying Zeke all that money. I mean, they were in a tough spot there for a couple years where they were getting such little production out of him for such a high price tag. So it's just at the end of the day, when all these GMs are looking at a contract like that, it's just not worth the risk. And when you can go out and pay a wide receiver or a solid tight end similar money, and your investment is a lot more safer just on durability and, you know, value to the offense, it's just a no brainer. And so they're in a really tough spot, the running backs in the league. It's funny, these Zoom calls that they have together, like this, like kumbaya kind of thing. I don't know what they're talking about in there, but they're kind of stuck at this point, and it's sad to see guys like Nick Chubb go down. Saquon got hurt, but there's not a lot of options.
Yeah, no, I see what both of y'all are saying. The real interesting, Frank brought up, more receiving work and being more versatile as a back that I do think is going to impact that value. I was listening to ESPN earlier and they were talking about Nick Chubb and he's going down this year and next year he has pretty much no guaranteed money. His salary is going to be $2.9 million and he may never, play again. Hopefully that's not the case. But you're seeing guys Nick Chubb is that whole offense. They have a great offensive line. Deshaun's really struggling, and they're basically overworking him for the price that he's getting paid compared to their quarterback that's worth $260 million contract. And it's hard as someone that just appreciates the NFL and the talent of all these players, seeing them go down like that and not really getting a shot to, make what they're worth. It's tough to see. I totally agree. Stuff like that happens. But yeah, just wanted to bring it up and kind of get into it. Recapping back to college a little bit before we will bring on our pick'em games. Um, I want to kind of forecast the next four games for Arkansas. We do not have a good percentage to win any of these games. We're going through a gauntlet of LSU in Baton Rouge under the lights, then going to play A&M, and then we have Alabama and Ole Miss after that. It is going to be an absolute test. At the beginning of the year, I had us going 9-3, and I'm sitting here at the schedule looking like we might be 2-5. So really hard gauntlet here. I am really concerned with where this season could go. We're going to learn a lot in this LSU game. Are y'all hopeful for the next four games? Are we going to show up like the same team, make mistakes? What do y'all think?
I think it's hard to lose 5 games in a row.
Not when you're
I
Arkansas.
mean, they got to pull one off. I'm circling the A&M game. It's an 11 a.m. kickoff here in Dallas. There's no way A&M is up for that. Like they probably are just the most overhyped, sluggish program in the country. I can see them just walking in their sleep into AT&T Stadium. However, we could do the exact same thing. So it's a tough road. I mean, we're definitely not winning more than one, but
What you got, Frank?
Yeah, I think we definitely have to sneak one out there. I'm probably looking at A&M, and I'm not very big on Old Miss. I think those are definitely winnable games. I think if we lose all four of these games, the season is effectively over. I think we're going to see guys start sitting out, transfers. I don't know if Pittman will survive that. If the wheels really fall off, we don't make a bowl game. That might be the end of the Pittman era. I really think so. If all of a sudden morale is lost on the season,
wow, hot
um,
take.
I was
yeah,
about to say, man.
yeah, I
You
think
think you think one? What would his record have to be to get fired or to save his job? Six
I
and
think he'd,
six.
yeah, 6-6. I
You're
think if
gonna
You
be
think he
he,
goes 5 and 7? He's fired.
I don't think he's fired if he goes 5-7, but I think if he goes like 4-8, I think it's definitely going to be talked about. I don't know exactly what might happen, but I think people are going to be pretty pissed after like that one season he put together 2 years ago, and then we were pretty hyped last year with some big transfers. Same kind of story this year, and it seems like we're just losing all these like close games against non-conference opponents that we should be winning. Um, and you can say you're unlucky, but at a certain point, it's play calling, it's coaching, it's just not being situationally aware for what you need to do when the moment comes. So he was definitely going to be in the hot seat if we don't sneak out one or two. But I'm always optimistic. A&M is kind of a joke, so I think we could definitely sneak one out there after them losing to Miami. I really don't think they're that good, and Jimbo's definitely in the hot seat as well, even though he's on some insane contract that they couldn't even fire him if they wanted to.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I got you. Well, we're I got one more little thing before we hop into our pick 'em. The year we went 9-4 and won the Outback Bowl, pretty sure most of our SEC wins and wins that year in general were one score ball games. So what we've seen in the past 2 years, in my opinion, is us just not sneaking those games out when we were 2 years ago in game one possession games that one play might change the aspect of the ball game. So that is tough. We'll hop right into our guest pick'em. This is the first time we have a guest. Shout
let's
out Frank.
go.
We'll keep up with it. Man, this is a great week for college football. We have the most ranked matchups that we've had um, since 2015 in 1 week, I believe. So the first game we're going to talk about is Florida State at Clemson. The line on this game is FSU -2. Brad, I'll let you start off.
Um, I am heavy on the Seminoles. Give me Florida State. I think they're going into Death Valley and taking care of business pretty easily.
Frank?
Yep. Give me the same. I think they have a bounce back game after a close one to Boston College, they're going to come out angry and motivated to whip it up against Clemson.
I agree. I'm going Florida State -2. They had a scare last week. I think they come out and prove a point and get the job done at Clemson. Moving on, SEC matchup number 13, number 15. We have Ole Miss at Alabama. The spread was kind of surprising, but Alabama -7. I am actually going to go Alabama -7. I think they didn't play Milroe. I don't know why they didn't play Milroe. I think he played a decent game against Texas. He did not lose that game for them. I think they were searching for options. I'm going Alabama -7 at home, righting the ship and getting the year going.
Frankie?
Yeah, I'm going to go Alabama as well. I think I'm not a big Lane Kiffin guy. I think Nick Saban's still Nick Saban, and I'll ride with him until he gives me a reason not to.
Well, like as Bridges picked in Arkansas to win the SEC West last week, I picked Ole Miss, so I'm going Ole Miss +7. I think they can pull it off. I like Jackson Dart over Milroe. I like their momentum going into the game. I think they can pull it off.
As Kiffin would say, get your popcorn ready. So I we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm going to skip over. We're going to hit Ohio State Notre Dame last because that's game day. We'll pivot into Arkansas LSU -18. Frank, I'll let you start it off.
Yeah, give me LSU. I think this is going to be a pretty tough game.
No.
Night game in Baton Rouge. I think the wheels might come off here. I just really am. I'm struggling to see what our offense is going to do, and I think our defense will hold up. I could see this being like an ugly scoring game, like 10-27 or something. Like I could just see us really having struggled to move the ball, and maybe they struggle a little bit too, but it's obviously going to come a little bit easier.
I
But
hate
I
to
could see them
burst your bubble,
sneaking
but
out
that
the
would
cover.
Frank.
What was that?
27-10, the Hogs would cover. You would lose your bet.
Well, and then they kick a last second field goal or
Okay,
something like that. I could see this being like a bad beat type situation, kind of either way. But I don't see the Hogs winning it at all. I see LSU covering.
I got you. I'm gonna actually ride Arkansas +18. I do not think we'll win the game by any means. I think our defense is good enough to make it close, and I think that we'll be able to score the ball a couple times. So I think that they would have to put up a 40 spot and our offense not play good to not cover the 18 points, Brad.
I'm with Frankie. Give me LSU. No faith in this Arkansas team at this point.
Yeah,
LSU looked good last week against Mississippi State. They covered against them. Uh, I'll ride the Tigers.
yeah. I'm just a dreamer, I guess. Um,
Believe.
one for you, Brad. We've got Iowa at Penn State. The line is Penn State 14.5. I'll let you go first.
Give me the Hawks. I mean, I don't remember the last time they got blown out at a white out game. 14.5 seems a little steep. I'm not confident they pull out the win, but I think they keep it close. Defense is playing really well. Penn State looks okay. One of their better teams in the last few years, but I think the Hawks play well on the road.
I'm going Penn State -14.5. Frank?
Give me the Hawkeyes. The defense is not going to let it get. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they're definitely going to cover.
All right. Awesome. Last pick 'em of the day. We've got 4 minutes left on this Zoom, so we can't spend too much time. But Ohio State at Notre Dame, OSU -3.5. Ohio State looked really good last week. I'm going to take them at Notre Dame -3.5. I thought that they looked really good last week, so I'm going Ohio State.
I'm going to go. I have who I was visiting in DC. He went to Michigan and is a huge Nebraska fan. So he claims to be a Big Ten expert. And he is saying that Ohio State is going to have a bad year this year. So give me Notre Dame as a good Catholic boy. I'm going to go with Notre Dame to pull this one off.
Sweet. Brad?
I'm with Will. Give me the Irish. I like Sam Hartman a lot. We've talked about him on this show. I really like him. I like Marcus Freeman and his, coming off his first year at Notre Dame. I think they're in a good spot. And I'm expecting a lot from them, maybe possible playoff appearance. So go Irish.
Heck yeah. Well, I mean, this is the first week where there's a lot of disparity between the picks. This is going to get interesting. We're not going to be tied for very much longer, Brad. My
Go.
Yeah, would love to thank Frankie for being our first guest on the podcast. We'll definitely do it again. Any final words, Frank?
Yeah, thanks for having me. We'll have to keep up score with the next guest. I hope they can pick them as well as I did, hopefully. And yeah,
Yeah,
just thanks again for having me on.
for sure. We'll take a running tally. And as always, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw or didn't like what you saw, maybe just subscribe to the channel, show some boys the support. But yeah, that'll be it for the Brad Burns Bridges episode 3. We look forward to a good weekend of football, and we'll see you here again next week.